So let's talk about Friedrich Nietzsche. He's got to be one of philosophy's most notorious figures, right? His ideas get twisted and misunderstood all the time. But what if his diagnosis of a sick society is actually more relevant now than it ever was? Today, we're going to unpack his powerful critique of the modern world and the really radical, challenging prescription he offered for what ails us. Right off the bat, Nietzsche pulls no punches. He opens one of his major works with this absolutely devastating line. And you have to understand, this wasn't just some philosopher complaining. No, this was a profound critique of where he saw humanity headed, a deep, deep exhaustion with the whole direction of Western culture. So, what was the problem, exactly? What did Nietzsche see happening in the 19th century that filled him with this kind of fatigue? Well, to really get his prescription, first we have to understand his diagnosis of the crisis. And that diagnosis? Well, it begins with what is arguably his most famous and definitely his most misunderstood declaration. You see, when Nietzsche said God is dead, he wasn't celebrating. Not at all. He was sounding an alarm. For centuries, a shared religious morality was the bedrock, the very foundation of Western civilization. And he saw that science and rationalism had basically chipped away at that foundation until it was fatally weakened. Without it, humanity was left just staring into this terrifying void. A crisis of meaning he called nihilism, that creeping, awful suspicion that life is ultimately meaningless. So this got Nietzsche thinking. If these values that had defined the West for literally 2,000 years were now crumbling, he had to figure out their origin story. I mean, where did our ideas of good and evil actually come from? And his investigation led him to a pretty groundbreaking conclusion. It's not just that there are different moral codes out there. He argued there are two fundamentally different types of morality, and they've been at war with each other for centuries. Okay, so on one side, you've got master morality. This is the code of the ancient nobles, the rulers. For them, good was just a description of themselves, strong, powerful, healthy. Anything weak was simply bad. It's a morality that comes from saying a powerful yes to oneself. But then you have the other side, slave morality, which, as you can guess, was born from the oppressed and the weak. The psychological engine that drives this second morality is a concept Nietzsche called ressentiment. It's this bitter, poisonous stew of envy and hatred that the powerless feel towards the powerful. And since they can't beat the masters physically, they do something absolutely brilliant, psychologically speaking. They perform a transvaluation of values. They flip the whole script. And this is the switch. Slave morality basically says, you know those powerful masters you call good? No, no, no. They are evil. And everything about us, our weakness, our suffering, our poverty, that is what is truly good. For Nietzsche, this was it. This was the great slave revolt in morality, a revolt that he says began with ancient Jews, was perfected by Christianity, and ended up conquering the entire Roman Empire. Okay, so that's the diagnosis, a civilization built on what he saw as a life-denying slave morality, and its foundations are now collapsing into nihilism. So what's the cure? Well, it starts with understanding the one fundamental drive that Nietzsche believed powered everything in existence, and that is the will to power. Now, it is so important to get this right. This isn't just about a desire to dominate other people. For Nietzsche, everything is an expression of this will. A tree growing towards the sunlight, an artist creating a masterpiece. That's the will to power. It is the deep internal drive in all of life to overcome obstacles, to expand, to grow, and to become more than it is. And it's sneaky. It shows up in all these subtle ways. The philosopher who wants to find the truth, that's their will to power over chaos. The scientist trying to understand the laws of the universe is driven by it. He even argued that an act of love could be a kind of secret desire to possess another person's heart. It's the basic energy of the universe. So, if the will to power is the engine, where's it driving us? Nietzsche believed that just like humanity overcame the ape, we now have to set ourselves a new goal. We have to overcome man as we know him. And this goal, it has a name.
That goal is the Ubermensch, or the overman. And listen, this has been so terribly misunderstood. Let's be really clear. This is not a master race or some comic book superhero. The Ubermensch is a potential future for us, an individual who has finally thrown off the chains of that old herd morality, who isn't afraid of their own will to power, and who has the strength to create their own values, becoming the meaning of their own life.
In his book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche gives us this incredible image. Man is not the destination. He says we're like a rope tied over a giant abyss, a dangerous crossing stretched between our animal past and our potential future, the Ubermensch. We're a transition, a constant process of becoming something more. Okay, so this all sounds great, but how do you actually live in a way that moves you toward that goal? How do you know if you're really affirming life or just denying it? For this, Nietzsche comes up with one last, absolutely devastating thought experiment to test your very soul. I want you to really imagine this. You're in your loneliest loneliness, and a demon suddenly appears and says this to you. Every single joy, every pain, every thought, every sigh of your entire life, you will live it again, exactly as it was, and again for eternity. No changes, no escape. This right here, this is the ultimate test of what Nietzsche called amor fati, the love of one's fate. The goal isn't just to endure this thought or to bear it. The goal is to embrace it, to live your life in such a way that if that demon appeared, you would joyfully choose this eternal repetition. It forces you to ask a terrifying question. Am I living a life worth repeating forever? At the end of the day, what would your answer be? Would you collapse on the ground and curse that demon for trapping you in an eternal prison? Or would you look up and say, "You are a god, and I have never heard anything more divine"? Your answer to that question, Nietzsche suggests, reveals absolutely everything about the life you are choosing to live right now.